going to call to order the March 6, 2024 Citizens Advisory Committee. Should we go ahead and start with roll call?
Yes. Committee member Kester?
Here.
Committee member Minkoff?
Here.
Committee member Harrington?
Here.
Committee member Terrell?
Here.
Committee member Barney?
Here.
Committee member Rizzo?
Here.
And committee member Stephenson?
Here.
Committee member Castillo, Abling, and Knight all are excused.
Should we, do you want to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great. Going to go ahead and open it up to public comment on any non-agenda items. Yes, Shelley.
Hi. A lot of you may have noticed that I was not on the roll call. It's with a great deal of sadness and hesitation that I have had to resign from Citizens Advisory. I have been battling a few health issues, and my husband is battling some health issues, and we've been encouraged to really scale back. And because I'm on Parks Committee and even more reluctant to give up my role with them, I have to resign from Citizens Advisory. But I do want to say thank you to all of you for your kindness, for your confidence in electing me chair over the last couple of years, and know that you'll support Twyla in that role as much as you did me, and say I appreciate you. Dakota, if you would please pass on to Chris Ann how much I appreciate both of you and all you do for this committee, and your understanding in letting me resign at midterm like this. But I know I'm leaving you all in good hands. All right. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelley.
Thank you.
Oh, you're gonna make me cry. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Good luck.
All right. Well, it looks like our first call to order is election of a vice chair. So go ahead and open that up for discussion, and if everybody is interested. Nobody's making eye contact. Oh, thank you so much. Paul.
Yes, thank you, Twyla. I just wanted to make sure there's an opportunity for public comment on this agenda item.
Yes, sorry, I jumped to the next thing, so go ahead if there is.
Oh, so you're ready for me now?
Yes.
Yep, good.
Okay. This got to be more than I expected. I wish I had time to plan more in advance to get this to you in writing. So anyway, I had to get it in writing to get all my thoughts in one place. Okay. To preface my remarks by first saying that this has nothing whatsoever to do with whoever is ultimately CAC chair or vice chair. The main issue I want to address is the lack of guidance in the Troutdale Municipal Code regarding how committee officer vacancies are filled. The language regarding non-officer vacancies is fairly clear and straightforward, stating, quote, "A vacancy occurs on a committee during the year, the alternate for the committee shall automatically be chosen to fill the vacancy," unquote. In the current situation, there's no alternate, so that position will presumably be left vacant until appointments are made for the new term beginning in July. There's really no language in the TMC addressing a vacancy per se in the office of either chair or vice chair. The closest is, quote, "The vice chair acts as the presiding officer of the committee in the absence of the chair," unquote. There's no distinction made between filling in for the chair when the chair is not available and if the chair has left the committee entirely or simply resigned as chair. The code does not specifically state that the vice chair will automatically assume the office of chair. This will be at least the third chair resignation in the last year that I'm aware of. 2 previous vacancies were handled differently, indicating to me that code language is inadequate. It happened that those 2 were both within the PSEAC. During the first, the vice chair called for a new election of both chair and vice chair. In the second instance, it was assumed that the vice chair would automatically become chair, and only a new chair was elected. If the federal model is being followed, wherein the vice president automatically becomes president, I learned just earlier today in researching presidential succession, VP vacancies were left unfilled until passage of the 25th Amendment in 1967. One other fairly recent change to the code made during the Ryan administration was that no one can serve as chair on more than 2 committees. The vice chair is automatically promoted to chair. Someone being a chair of 2 committees and also a vice chair of 1 or more others would be ineligible to accept a 3rd chair position. Perhaps there should be a prohibition written into the code to prevent that scenario. Practically speaking, anyone accepting a vice chair position should be willing and prepared to serve as chair for the balance of the 1-year term. Thank you for your attention. I know that was kind of lengthy.
Thank you. All right, we have nobody in the chamber, so I'll go ahead and close public comments. And we will move on to election of the vice chair.
I was going to throw Will under that bus, but he's not here, so. That probably wouldn't be kosher.
Well, and based on how things have gone, I don't know that Will would want to do it anyway.
Probably not, but still. I'd certainly be willing, but I'm one of the newest involvees here, so I'm not sure. Yeah, not sure what everybody's thoughts are.
I was just gonna say, I guess, should we ask whose names? I mean, I'd nominate Kevin Minkoff, who's sitting next to me, and you can, I don't know. I don't know who wants to do it, so. Who's got the skill set for it?
What is the skill set for it?
Yeah.
I mean, there's not much to it. I mean, yeah, I'm willing to do it. Nobody else wants to do it.
I'll throw my name in just for fun too.
Oh, there we go.
There we go. So do we have, are you officially?
Yes, officially, I would take this position if offered.
Okay, and then we have Adrian, are you going here?
Like I said, I would be willing to as well. I mean, it's. Look what you started.
I know, I did.
It's good.
So nobody wanted to do it, so I'm trying to find who wants to. So.
Do you also?
Sure.
Okay. And then,
Sure.
Okay.
so do we need to officially make a movement for?
So, yeah, typically how it would go is we have almost everybody's names in the hat. Then what it would be is a nomination and then a second and then a vote. If there's no one elected, then another nomination, second, vote.
And how do we vote? Do we just go yea or nay for Kevin, yea or nay for Shelby, yea or nay for
Oh, I'm not
Chris?
in. I'm
Well,
not
it would
in.
be whoever's nominated and seconded. then that person is now up for quote unquote election.
Okay.
And then it would be a vote amongst for all in favor, yay, all opposed, yay, and then we tally and see where we're at. And then and if there's not enough votes for them to make it to the vice chair, then we would go on to, if there's another person, then they'd be nominated, seconded.
So that way I can vote yay for Shelby and so on. And
Shelby's not.
Shelby doesn't want it.
not yet.
Yeah.
I just had a question. Could we ask who's familiar with how to, I mean, don't you have to know Robert's rules to be able to run a meeting? So whoever knows that, would that help
It's
us?
usually you nominate someone seconds. You can do a yay or a nay, or you can do a roll call.
Oh, it's okay, but what I'm saying is, each of the candidates, it feels like if they have a skill set, we should know if you know how to do that, right? Because you have to run the meeting, and that might help us.
Dakota kind of keeps us in line too.
Okay.
when we step
Well, that's
on.
totally true. I guess we are kind of informal. I always thought that we have to know it. That's why I don't want to do anything, because I don't know the subjects.
Oh, that's no reason.
Oh,
I see it as we're citizens, right? And so we can learn.
okay, so we can learn.
I see the reason for bringing it up, I guess, is just we've never discussed that before. I feel like as far as running the meetings here, it's pretty basic. We've never had any particularly complicated situations.
Yes, thankfully, we haven't, so.
Because if memory serves, I mean, CAC is one of the few, if not the only of the major committees where we don't have like recorded and published minutes and such for each meeting,
Okay.
so,
Okay,
I mean,
so it can be.
other than the audio and video recordings, I mean, if we don't get Robert's rule all that right,
It's okay.
We don't even have a definition for who we are.
Exactly. Let alone how we do it.
We're really starting at square one.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
who wants to go first?
Let's make the first witness.
Now we have to have a stump
Okay.
speech.
I nominate Kevin Minkoff for vice chair.
Second.
So the vote then, all in favor, yay? So we have to do hands, so we.
Don't we have to have them all listed?
Has to be majority.
So one.
Was she saying run through all the candidates first?
Oh, well, then we do it by,
One at a time.
yeah, one at a time, so it's nominated, seconded, they're up for election. And then yay or nay, and then if they don't have the votes, then we'll move on to another nomination.
All right, so we got 6, right?
6.
So we need 4 votes to
We
put
have
them on the
7.
list. So
Yeah,
we have
there's
7?
7 here.
No, you can vote for yourself if you're.
That's hard, I'm sorry. Okay, cool.
All right, so,
So you need 4 to get it on the list, right? All right, good to go.
all right, so we were at the vote for Kevin.
Yes.
Mhm.
So we had yay,
Yeah, everybody vote yay, who's voting yay? All right, so we got 5.
That's
All right,
enough.
cool.
congratulations.
That's it?
Yep.
That's it.
Oh,
Okay.
so then next, do we have another nomination?
No, there's no point.
No,
What?
because he's already been elected.
Well, you got it.
I don't think this was right.
You were sitting next to me, I said, okay,
All right.
it's gonna be the way it is.
Well, congratulations, Vice Chair. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and move on to our discussion item. And that is committee role. And I think attached to, in our packet, was the U of O article. And we agreed that we would take, oh, yeah.
I didn't do
There's a stack of them over there.
You can have this one, because I've got
Oh, you got it.
it. Yes, thank
Anybody
you.
else need a paper copy?
Mine, I just didn't print the cover
that.
page.
Well, because I got this, but it looks different.
Look like this. Your pages look like this.
I didn't know if this was the same thing.
Yeah, that's the same
Just
thing.
have to cover
It's-
it, sorry.
Yeah, I didn't bother printing out the introduction either.
Yes. So I wanted to open it up to discussion. We have down today covering the first 3 chapters of this. And wondering if anybody had any ideas on how best to approach this, or just to talk through the different main points of each chapter.
Go ahead, Chris.
Just flipping through this, chapters 1 and 2 are both pretty short, so maybe we could just like read through them as a group and discuss them, and then chapter 3, it is a little longer, but it's not like super long either.
No, agreed, because chapter 1 is pretty much all about definitions, which is gonna be relatively straightforward. Chapter 2 is basically kind of descriptive of the overarching goal and the idea that citizen involvement is trying to get around. And chapter 3 is where the meat of it is, although there's large chunks of sort of towards the tail end of chapter 3 that kind of talk about this. They spend a lot of time talking about the citizen involvement structure at the state level, which is not something we really need to discuss. So, but yeah, I think if we just kind of go through section by section, and kind of take notes and comments and as we go, and maybe plow through this.
Perfect. Woodrow?
So I think another suggestion, in addition to that, is understanding what framework we're trying to build. So if we have a description of our committee, then we know that from reading what all the different things we're going to be reading over the next few meetings, then we're going to want to make a note. This needs to go into our description. And if we're going to have as part of our description, goals, objectives, and definitions, then we should also have someone who's taking notes and is going to say, okay, this goes in definitions, this goes in our goals. And again, so by the time we're finished, we don't have to go back and do all that again. And we can just, have a brain dump at the end of our meetings of what we want in which section, and then we can clean that up at the end of the meeting. Otherwise, I'm afraid that we'll just kind of get to the end of the sections and start from scratch.
Well, yeah, part of this exercise and what sort of kind of led us down this path from what Ray Young was telling us is by ordinance, the definition of the CAC basically says that we are the primary vehicle for figuring out and dealing with the community, the citizen involvement plan. And that sentence is the rabbit hole that we're going down, and which is what all of this is.
And again, so
Yeah.
the framework,
Yeah.
so that while we're going down this rabbit hole, we're grabbing on kernels of thought and putting it where it belongs, so when we're done, you don't have to go through the rabbit hole.
I like that. So maybe what we'll do is read through this, and at the end of each chapter, we can discuss the goals and the definitions that we think are worth pulling forward to the next.
Is there someone who's taken the notes to do that? I don't think it falls on Dakota, does it, or?
I can. I typically take notes at meetings.
But I think, this is like a working document of what our goals, objectives.
And this will go through multiple iterations.
Absolutely, and we just gotta, I'm just thinking that we should note while we're doing the
Yes,
exercise.
yeah. And I'll take notes too, so hopefully between the two of us, we can have it all together. So do we want to read out loud, or should we?
I'm okay with that.
Okay,
I want to read too.
all right. Do you want to start?
Sure.
Thank you. All right,
Chapter 1.
Chris.
Yep.
All right, chapter 1, what is citizen involvement? Oregon's statewide planning program calls for each city and county to develop and maintain a citizen involvement program that ensures the opportunity for citizens to be involved in all phases of the planning process. But what is a citizen involvement program? How does it work? What can planners do to help the public get involved? This handbook answers those questions and many others. It starts by answering the most basic question of all: what is citizen involvement? Citizen involvement means participation in planning by people who are not professional planners or government officials. It is a process through which everyday people take part in developing, administering, and amending local comprehensive plans and land use regulations. It is citizens participating in the planning and decision-making that affect their community. What is a citizen? Oregon's planning goals define the term citizen very broadly. The definition encompasses corporations, government agencies, and interest groups, as well as individuals. That's important because today's organizations play a big role in land use planning. 20 years ago, the most common form of citizen involvement was individuals speaking to a city council or writing a letter to a county planning commission. Today, many citizens participate in planning by getting involved in an organization that represents their interests. Okay, someone else got it.
So we're at what is participation?
Yeah.
To participate is to express oneself at the proper time and in the proper forum. Suppose, for example, that 2 weeks before the city council is to hear a proposal for rezoning a certain piece of property, a citizen writes a letter to the council saying she supports the proposal. That's participation. She has communicated her opinion to the right people at the right time, so it may affect the decision. If the same citizen states her support in a letter to the local newspaper a month after the hearing, that's not participating, at least not in a legal sense. The form and timing are wrong. A key part of any citizen involvement program is to inform citizens about how, when, and where they may participate. For some types of planning decision, the law limits a citizen's right to participate. It's important for citizens to know such limitations. Therefore, a key part of any local citizen involvement program is to inform citizens about how, when, and where they may participate. Why get the public involved in planning? There are several reasons why citizens should have the opportunity to participate in planning. The most important is simply that our system of government gives citizens the right to have a strong voice in all matters of public policy, including planning. The law requires that citizens get that opportunity. The second reason is that only citizens can provide the information needed to develop, maintain, and carry out an effective comprehensive plan. Professional planners and local officials need comments and ideas from those who know the community best, the people who live and work there. Third, citizen involvement educates the public about planning and land use. It creates an informed community, which in turn leads to better planning. Fourth, it gives members of the community a sense of ownership of the plan. It fosters cooperation among citizens and between them and their government. That leads to fewer conflicts and less litigation. Finally, citizen involvement is an important means of enforcing our land use laws. Having citizens informed about planning laws and giving them access to the planning process ensures that the laws are applied properly. I got you, Chris.
What are the phases of the planning process? Planning is more than just writing and adopting a plan. It is a process made up of many steps, including these: gathering the technical data and facts needed to make sound policies and decisions, evaluating community needs, values, and goals, adding new policies to the plan or amending existing ones, adding items to the plan's inventory of community resources, periodically reviewing and revising the plan, applying the plan's policies to specific land use decisions, developing, maintaining, and applying the ordinances used to carry out the plan, creating a new element of the comprehensive plan, such as a transportation plan. Oregon's 277 cities and counties all have adopted comprehensive plans, and the state's Land Conservation and Development Commission, LCDC, has reviewed and approved, acknowledged them all. But that doesn't mean that planning in Oregon is done. It's a continuing effort to shape our communities and guide the use of our land. As such, it can never be done. The activities that make up this continuing effort are referred to in Goal 1 as phases of the planning process. Goal 1 requires that citizens be given opportunities to participate in all of those phases. Planning doesn't end with the adoption of the comprehensive plan, and neither does citizen involvement. And then there's some notes.
we want to talk about key parts of this that we want to take on board, or?
Well, I think we do need to, or do probably want to pick this apart a little bit. Like, for example, just that paragraph about citizen involvement, it would be worthwhile, I think, at this point, to acknowledge the things that Troutdale already does, and all of the things that Troutdale already does, that is essentially exactly that. The fact that we have these committees that are citizen volunteers is one thing. The fact that we hold public meetings and we solicit public comment at every single one of these meetings, that is all opportunities for citizen involvement. And so that's true of every committee and every working group that we have in the city. So to a large extent, all of us are participating in citizen involvement. Just as a start.
And to piggyback off of that, so it goes very specifically, it talks about the development administration and amending the plans. So we know where and when those opportunities exist, and what is the mechanism for notification and timing, I guess, for participation.
Well, I think even before we get to that level, one of the other key points that I pulled out of this, and just in the participation section, and this I think is gonna be one of the key goals. And I know I've mentioned this before. One of our key goals as a community, as a committee overseeing this involvement plan, is some level of oversight and direction to how that communication happens. Because there are portions of the planning process which are by design handed to very specific groups. Like, Planning Commission has its role as far as making the official decisions on how policies are enacted. Staff does a lot of the legwork on this, like the gathering of the technical data, and depending on the level of the application, just making the decisions. But I think CAC may have a role in overseeing and evaluating and making suggestions on how those things, how that process is communicated to the citizenry writ large. Because I know one of the things that that has been talked about for a long time, and I think is now kind of being implemented more, is more information on the website about what applications are in progress or happening, or what development is happening. For a while, that there wasn't a whole lot there, but
It hasn't been updated in years, and
yeah,
now we're
so
finally getting that back up to speed properly.
directing things like that or making suggestions like that could be a big part of the role that we have as a group.
I will totally agree that so many people that I've talked to feel like there's so many things that, oh, I didn't know about that. I didn't even know that was happening. So obviously our communication with the citizens is, I don't know what is the right thing to communicate, how it is, but it's probably a bunch of different avenues. But I think if we work on improving that and having being able to, for citizens to be able to see things coming up with parks, with planning commission, with CAC, seeing clearer what we're covering, I think that could potentially bring more people around to participating in the process.
And possibly even something as simple and specific as a certain level of oversight as to, or suggestions of what goes on the website, what goes in the champion, what goes in the Facebook posts, stuff like that. Because I think, staff does all of that,
Right.
but I don't know how much direction they get.
I know, for example, something when I started here, I noticed that wasn't being done, regardless of where like multiple projects are. That was a page that was on the website that wasn't being updated. Myself and the assistant planner chose to wait till we had a director, because we agreed that it needed to be updated, but how, what kind of information should be on there, so we wanted to wait to the director. That is something that we met with her about, I believe it was 2 weeks ago. She's working with Chris Sam right now, working with revamping that page. But one thing that I noticed that some other jurisdictions I've worked for in the past, all public notices or notice of application, notice of public hearing get posted online. That wasn't being done here. So now that's something that from feedback, hearing what I've heard so far today and in the past, that's now, we do that for every application. And that's directly from feedback we've heard from citizens. That's cool. And that, I think that's kind of what you're getting to. Adrian, is little feedback like that does help, because we don't get a whole lot of comments for our applications a lot of time. And it's by design, state requirements are only so many people within so far from the property, depending on the type, get notified. But another way to still have public engagement for those, as you were mentioning, is that if someone doesn't know about it, how are they supposed to give a comment if they're not living within that area? So that's why I want to be able to make it more readily available on the website. And that's just directly from feedback we got from citizens.
Excellent point. So, communication is really just sender, medium, receiver, right? And it can be the notification one way, it can be, website, whatever. But I think what's key, before we get in the weeds about modes of communication, we really got to define what things we have to communicate. What are the elements, and Dakota rattled off a couple different parts of it. Adrian rattled off a couple different parts of it. We really got to get our hands around what, right? What things, what items need to be on our purview before we jump into and try and solve the communication piece. We need that list. What things do our committee, what's in our wheelhouse?
And maybe, sorry, please go, Kevin.
Really?
Yes.
Thank you. This is Kevin Binkhoff. I think as far as what we're doing here today in taking this document and using it to assist us in defining both what Woodrow and Adrian and Dakota have talked about, I like this document. I've read through it, and I think we could, instead of making it what is essentially this is kind of a recruitment type document. It's more like an advertisement. Here's why you would want to get involved, and this is sort of, like they were saying, it's a first chapter are definitions, but they're formed, it's a very folksy document. Questions and answers. I think we could take this and actually use it by making it applicable specifically to our group. What is our group? So if we started by saying Oregon statewide planning program calls for each city, that's a good jumping off point. This is why we exist in Oregon overall, because they, I don't know if that mandate is the proper term, but they certainly encourage involvement. Then we can come down and say, Troutdale's citizen involvement is exemplified by our Citizen Advisory Committee, the CAC, which participates, now we're getting down into, which participates in planning and includes citizens who are not professional planners or government officials. I don't know if that's actually correct for our committee. Can we have government officials on our committee? But anyway, again, that's starting to get specific and define which is what we're trying to do. And if we go through this and make it specific to our committee, we're gonna craft that document which is gonna define who we are and what we're supposed to do.
Some of that is coming in chapter 3. Because one of the, and I know this is something that Will had said on a couple of occasions in previous meetings, and this is where pretty much what all of chapter 3 talks about, is the difference between a community, let's see, how did it, the CCI, Community for Citizen Involvement, and a CAC, which this document treats as very different things. And not to sort of get ahead of the reading game a little bit, but chapter 3 very specifically talks about the CAC within the framework of this guide pretty much could roll into every committee that Troutdale's got. So I think we can take this framework and sort of build on what we're already doing as a city, because all of these committees are doing wonderful work. The piece that I think we're trying to enhance here is how do we get more citizen involvement? In addition to, so it's that CCI, that Committee for Citizen Involvement, that I think a lot of people think is lacking. But that doesn't necessarily mean we as a CAC, partially because of our own history as a group, need to necessarily do only that, because there will be things that we get passed on by city council that we get to consider, and there will be things that come up from the citizenry that they bring to us that we will get to consider and pass along to city council. So, I think we should sort of embrace the hybrid role, even though from a textual language in an ordinance that runs the risk of making things look a little messy. We can do both.
All right, let's move on and jump into the second chapter here. We can keep making progress and get it through.
Chapter 2, goal 1.
Yes. Anybody want to read?
Yeah, I can take it. The basic standard for citizen involvement in Oregon is statewide planning goal 1, citizen involvement. Land Conservation and Development Commission, LCDC, adopted it on December 27th, 1974, and it took effect on January 1st, 1975. Goal 1 calls for each city and county in Oregon to develop a citizen involvement program that ensures an opportunity for citizens to be involved in all phases of the planning process. The goal cannot assure that every person who gets involved in planning will get what he or she wants. No policy can promise that. But Goal 1 does promise that every citizen will have an opportunity to participate in planning. Goal 1 can't guarantee that the outcome of the game, but does guarantee that everyone gets a chance to play. Like all of Oregon's planning goals, Goal 1 is mandatory. Its provisions have force of law. The goal is accompanied by several, quote, guidelines that are optional. Local governments may follow them, but they are not required to. Unlike many of Oregon's statewide planning goals, Goal 1 is not supplemented by administrative rules that explain or refine its policies. Provisions related to citizen involvement, however, are found in several statutes and rules on other topics such as periodic review, open public meetings, see Chapter 4. What is a citizen involvement program? Citizen involvement program is a system for enabling citizens to participate in the local planning process. The CAP may be a separate document, or it may be a chapter in the comprehensive plan. Either way, the CIP is in a legal sense part of the local comprehensive plan. Any changes to the CIP constitute a plan amendment subject to state and local regulations that govern such amendments. Every city and county in Oregon has adopted a citizen involvement program. Actually, I want to pause there just before I lose this thought. Dakota, would it be possible, since this CIP has obviously been submitted to the state for evaluation and approval at some point, would it be possible to track down what Troutdale actually submitted for its CIP?
Back in the 80s.
Yeah, it was a while ago, but I
Probably
can
on
see if we
paper.
have that.
Yeah.
I'll look into that.
I just wanted to mention that before I lost it. Let's see, it's part of an acknowledgement process for state review, local plans in Oregon that all took place in the late 70s, early 80s. Most cities and counties have not amended their CIPs since they were acknowledged. And in fact, the CIP is a chart that describes the course for citizen involvement in a particular city or county. It serves as a guide not only to local planners and elected officials, but also to state agencies. Goal 1 says that state agencies shall, quote, make use of existing local citizen involvement programs established by counties and cities, end quote. Next.
What are components of a CIP? Goal 1 requires that a citizen involvement program contains 6 components. The goal also describes certain steps that must be addressed in each of those components. In effect, Goal 1 is a blueprint that shows how to build a citizen involvement program. The blueprint is outlined on the next page. Local governments may, and often do, build more elaborate programs than the blueprint calls for. But whether the local program is a simple or elaborate, it should include all of the basic elements required by Goal 1. Goal 1's blueprint for a CIP. Component 1, citizen involvement. Provide for widespread citizen involvement. Provide for involvement by a cross-section of affected citizens. Establish and maintain a committee for citizen involvement whose members are selected by an open, well-publicized public process. See Chapter 3 for details on CCIs. Specify a system by which the CCI periodically evaluates the process being used for citizen involvement. Component 2, communication. Assure effective two-way communications between local officials and citizens. Establish mechanisms for maintaining communications between citizens and local officials. Such mechanisms include a wide variety of techniques and processes such as, or like newsletters, mailings, legal ads, display ads, postings. See Chapter 5. Component 3, citizen influence. Provide the opportunity for citizens to be involved in all phases of the planning process. Describe the phases of the local planning process. Specify how citizens are to be involved in each phase. 104, technical information. Assure that technical information is available in an understandable form. Describe measures for translating technical information into a simplified, understandable form. Help citizens interpret such information. Make technical information used to decide policy matters readily available to citizens at a local public library or other location open to the public. Component 5, feedback mechanisms. Assure that citizens get responses from policymakers. Describe how citizens who have participated will receive a response from policymakers. Specify that the rationale for policy decisions will be available to the public in a written record. Component 6, financial support. Ensure adequate funding for the citizen involvement program. Describe the human, financial, and informational resources to be used for citizen involvement. Specify what levels of staffing and funding will be adequate. Show these resources as an integral component of the planning budget.
So I guess as we're getting into introductory materials, there's a question I thought of that I feel like we touched on when we were discussing Chapter 1, which is that this is obviously a very citizen-oriented thing. And so I guess the question is, I'm wondering what it is we're missing, because it's perhaps a little depressing to see this every week. It'd be nice to have actual citizens here that want to hear what's going on besides just our committee members.
you're not wrong. And I think to a certain extent, some of that is, and you can only advertise so much. I mean, people have lives, people are busy, and trying to get more people here is tricky. But increasing that communication level can probably make a big difference. I know one of the other things that stuck out to me, and I know this has been true in a couple of the communities that I've lived in, is that when you talk about citizen involvement, a lot of times that involvement, and it's sort of alluded to earlier in chapter 1, a lot of that involvement is not coming from individuals, it's coming from organizations within the community. I mean, some larger cities have small packs of neighborhood associations that are sort of the sub-interface between like city government, city committees, and the individual neighborhood. So you would see at meetings like this, representatives from those neighborhood associations, and those associations would be a direct point of contact from like us or staff or something that would be part of that communications plan. So we don't really have that in Troutdale, so it's not quite an option, although there are certain pockets of residents where I could see it happening. The one that immediately sticks out to mind, just because it's been in front of committees lately, is the RV park. Had a bunch of people here when that development was being discussed, with that application down there was being discussed. I could see that whole park forming an association and regularly having representation when appropriate.
I do think you touched on something important as we think about this work, and I think this is comments probably a little ahead of where we are in the reading, but maybe part of that work that we do also is, even though that we might not have formal connections within our community, looking at some of those, connections within the community that do have a voice of the people and building relationships there. Yes,
Well, as we read through the second chapter, I can tell you that, and I have a copy of, Adrian, what you were talking about, the city's code section that talks about what is the CAC. And it is spelled out in chapter 2.20.090 of the municipal code of Troutdale, the role of the CAC. So what I find is that Troutdale has already accomplished goal 1. We don't need to ask Troutdale to try to re-accomplish. We're just trying to define what is, and I think that the role of the CAC, according to this municipal code section, is what we're talking about is a little different definition than what's in the code section, according to what Ray Young brought to us, because this one says, the CAC shall perform any other duties, this is number 5 on the list, duties and functions assigned by the city council. Well, we've already hashed that out. I learned my lesson on that one, that no, that has, we're not restricted to just what the city council brings. So I don't think we need to try to reinvent the wheel in terms of goal 1. Goal 1 is accomplished, but again, we are trying to redefine or put some definite terms, definite instruction, if you will, to what this committee is and what this committee does.
I'm not so sure. I mean, because I go back to citizens being involved in all phases of the planning process. I don't know what all phases of the planning processes are. Go back and say citizens are involved in all steps of it. So, now granted, I'm probably the dimmest bulb in this.
No,
room.
but that's exactly what I'm talking about,
But,
is let's define that.
yeah, well, I think again, we have to define exactly what processes we're gonna be affecting or increasing communication, involvement, participation,
Mhm.
all those things that were defined. What processes in the planning phase are we actually working to get everybody, pointed towards? Because I think we have like 4 different planning process, between was it Town Center? And the planning committee in itself, and then just regular, the different levels of planning that planning requests that come through. And in my mind, I don't think we really have, I don't have my hands wrapped around what all the citizen involvement steps could be. I know the rules.
And to a certain extent, I think that's kind of what I was suggesting, is that I don't think we necessarily, in this stage, at least when we're trying to define, or when we're trying to sort of verbalize what our role is as a committee, as it relates to citizen involvement, I don't think we necessarily need to define like which phases of the planning process we're going to focus on, because part of goal 1 is getting citizen involvement in all of it. So our role as a committee is, and something that we could work on for the next couple of years, is reviewing that planning process and seeing where in the Troutdale structure, where can we possibly assist, amplify, retool citizen involvement.
I have just to understand, you're saying all these different phases. Do you mean different aspects of planning? Not that something goes, not everything's gonna like go to parks, to the different committees.
Well, chapter 1 spells it out. What are the phases of the planning process? Gathering the technical data and facts.
Well, so we don't, I mean, the public isn't necessarily involved in that process, gathering the technical data.
But,
I mean, that's what the planning department, or that's what they do, or the applicant does. I'm just confused. I was thinking more, we're worried about trying to get people involved in coming and participating in the process, whether it's on the different, like CAC, like committees, the one for parks and the one for public safety, or the one for the town center. Those are kind of like citizen advisory committees that are just for a different aspect in our community.
so.
And I just think the planning, that like the traditional, like you're gonna do a development, we're not talking parks, we're not talking something to do with public safety, we're talking, you're gonna do a development. Well, there are at times, but there's not so many steps I think the public can be involved in. They can be involved, in submitting testimony once they know something's coming up, some development. They can come to the committees.
And that's a key thing, because like.
We want to communicate when they can come.
Right, and so it doesn't necessarily have to be complicated, but like, as Dakota said earlier, it's like when applications come in, part of that citizen involvement is simply via some sort of medium, whether it's the website or something else, letting the citizenry know that those applications are in.
Yeah.
And it's so for that stage of the planning process and the gathering of technical data, as it said in the first step, having that stage even communicated out that it's happening might be all we need to do.
For example, another change that we are recently making to our template for notices of application, and this is directly related to the Sandy River Road townhomes with mobile park, is that
Recreational vehicle park.
RV park, is that no one in the park was notified because it goes to the property.
Right.
Right? So that's something that we're making a change within our template to state that if you receive this, because we don't have the addresses for everybody, that's not the property owner.
Right.
We don't have for renters, and you know, you can be renting out your house somewhere and not having any of you like to comment. So we're changing it where if it goes to the property owner, they then should, not saying it's gonna happen, but should then notify the person who might be actually living in in that said location.
Yeah.
So that's some wordage that we're changing in order to try to help better spread that out for the exact reason of the RV park.
And so like sorry, Kevin, just one moment. The kind of involvement that I'm suggesting that we have as a committee over citizen involvement would be bringing feedback like that, like has already been done, to staff to make those kinds of changes. I think that is a prime example of the kind of positive impact that we as a group can have to improve citizen involvement and citizen awareness. That might be all that happens over the planning process.
To address what you're questioning, and I feel for what you're saying here, that if we agree that the phases of the planning process, according to Chapter 1, are in fact legitimate, those are the planning process, we agree to them, I think we could go through each one and say, all right, number one, gathering the technical data and facts. How do we want citizens to be involved in that?
And who does
Is
it?
that something that Troutdale City Council really wants? Do citizens generally have the technical knowledge? And are they able to gather facts? And do we want this, do we want city council overrun? Do we want the planning commission overrun with citizen input?
Oh, hell yeah.
Okay, well, I'm not making a judgment there, I'm just saying, we could go through each one of those steps and say, how is it that we want citizens involved in that step? Evaluating community needs, values, and goals. How do we want citizens involved in that? Adding new policies, amending existing ones, etc. I mean, right down through the list. And then I think it'll answer specifically what you're asking about how do we get citizens involved? Because we can tell them this is how we want you involved at every step in the planning process.
And,
Chris?
yep, go ahead, Chris.
So Kevin, I guess I have a question about what you said. You made a statement, something to the effect of if we agree that the spaces are like legitimate or something, so are you having doubts about whether this is legit or a good way to do this?
Well, we're looking at this as the 30,000 foot view. This is something that U of O put together, I guess, based on Oregon's planning guidelines. Are we accepting this at face value, the whole document? Or are we actually using it as somewhat of a framework that is up for interpretation by Troutdale? I don't know, that my question. If we're gonna, if what you're alluding to is this is set in stone, this is the planning process, I'm fine with that. Then we accept that.
That's not what I meant, it's just like, if you had doubts, then I thought maybe that's something we should discuss in case others do too, to make sure this is something we should follow. Like, I don't see it as set in stone, I'm just seeing this as information presented to me, because a lot of this is new to me currently.
Right.
Victoria?
Victoria Rizzo, if you go back to what the planning is and all the data collection and everything, I've been on the CIC a very long time. And like, planning commission does something. They pass it on to us to review it. All this has already been done. Parks Department, same thing. They'll want us to review something they have planned. So we take all these committees and they'll give us this. Now, the other thing is, we may ask them, we hear you're doing this. Do you mind having CAC review it? Then we give our opinion. It's always on their opinion because we can't make decisions. And so, I mean, this pretty much states what other committees do, and then we can review it. Because there is no way this committee can do everything.
I think that's a good segue too. I just want to be mindful of where we are with time and getting through that third one, because I think that really that chapter goes into some good definitions between the CAC and the CCI, which I think will break that apart further. So are we comfortable jumping into that one?
Just one more thing, because like when I was going through and scrolling notes on this ahead of time, those different phases of that planning process as it's laid out there, what came to my mind is, it kind of makes sense with at least what I've observed about how Troutdale does the general planning process, what I've seen over the last year or two, and attending a lot of these meetings. But also that there are steps that are by process today, mostly accomplished by specific people. Like the technical data gathering is done by staff today. The adding new policies or amending policies is done by planning commission today. I mean, we're in the middle of that process right now. The applying plan policies, that's planning commission. Applying ordinances is staff. But some of those evaluation steps, going to what Victoria was saying, some of those evaluation steps, I think is something where CAC should have a role, separate from planning and parks and et cetera.
Well, maybe.
I'd like to just jump in. I would like to, before we move on to very quickly, I would say that the CCA is the CCI. CAC is the CCI. I don't think they're different. I think that's what Troutdale calls the CCI. Their CCI is the CAC. Secondly, I think our whole purpose might be defined in the sentence right above what the phases of the planning process, which says citizen involvement is an important means of enforcing our land use laws. Having citizens informed about planning laws and giving them access to the planning process. Maybe that's all we need to do, and just define what those two things are and not break down each and every one of these steps and have people, like Victoria said, because that's not the role or the desire of the city of Troutdale, but it is informing the citizens of the planning laws and giving them access to the process. That's what we help facilitate. So I want to say, before we move on.
I just have one thing, and it's that this might all be, I just happened to look at the thing at some point and find out the date. This is already a many decades old document.
Oh,
so
the date of this
Yeah, the
document?
date of this that I saw was October 2001 and 2002. So it's very old, so some of it can be dated, and the whole process in our state is, unfortunately, our reps and governor keep taking away our ability to do stuff because they pass laws that dictate stuff to us all the time. So it cuts people, it cuts cuts people out of the process, citizens out of the process. So I just point that out.
Very key part of that too is I believe there is I don't know if it's a sunset, I think there's a 50-year rule on a lot of the stuff that was enacted back in the 70s and 80s. So there's a requirement from the state after 50 years to go in and address any changes, deficiencies, blah, 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 blah. So, that's cool.
All right, well, let's go ahead.
Am I
and-
wrong, Dakotas? Sometimes I just shout bullshit. Is that sniff test? Okay.
We'll fact check that.
Well, that was a good one. I did good, huh?
That's an Ed question is what that is.
All right, who would like to kick us off? Anybody who is gonna be sad they haven't read?
There's nobody else.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Chris.
Chapter 3, the framework for citizen involvement. Goal 1 calls for citizen involvement programs, but who is to design such programs and carry them out? The answer to that is a combination of local and state committees, commissions, and agencies. The most important is the local committee for citizen involvement, or CCI. What is a CCI? Ultimately, the responsibility for any citizen involvement program lies with the local governing body, the city council, board of county commissioners, or county court. The governing body, however, usually delegates that responsibility to several organizations: the local planning department, the planning commission, a variety of committees, and the advisory group known as the Committee for Citizen Involvement. Goal 1 requires each city and county to maintain a CCI in a world full of committees. You may wonder why Goal 1 calls for yet another. The answer lies in the fact that all the organizations mentioned above, except the CCI, have multiple responsibilities. Some of those responsibilities detract from and even conflict with citizen involvement. Having a CCI, a committee with citizen involvement, as its only responsibility, ensures that citizens are not forgotten in the planning process. The CCI plays a vital role in citizen involvement. It's a watchdog and an advocate for public participation in planning. The CCI is a watchdog and an advocate for citizen involvement. Goal 1 states the CCI's duty to help the governing body develop, implement, and evaluate local citizen involvement program. The local citizen involvement program. A good example of how one of those tasks evaluation is performed comes from Clackamas County. There, the CCI evaluates the county citizen involvement program each year and presents a report to the county board of commissioners. That report gives county officials the information needed to refine the program and resolve any problems that may be occurring. The CCI usually is and should be a separate, independent committee. In some small cities and counties, however, local officials have been unable to find enough people to serve on all the committees and boards necessary to conduct community affairs. Some communities, therefore, have had the Planning Commission take over the responsibilities of the CCI. A few others have had the governing body become the CCI. Still others have used a hybrid organization. The Planning Commission plus one or more lay advisors serves as the CCI. An independent CCI is clearly the best choice to ensure widespread public involvement. The hybrid Planning Commission / CCI is an acceptable but less desirable choice. Finally, having the governing body or the Planning Commission act as the CCI is the least desirable option. It's likely to work against citizen involvement and should be done only as a last resort. The makeup of the CCI is specified in the Citizen Involvement Program acknowledged by LCDC. Changes to that program constitute a plan amendment which must be reviewed by the Department of Land Conservation and Development. And all that's supposed to do.
All right, I'll take it from here. Let's see. Usually, the local planning staff is responsible for carrying out the CIP. The planners manage the citizen involvement budget. Do we have a citizen involvement budget? Staff the program and decide which citizen involvement tools to use in a particular situation. Some larger cities and counties have special office or section for citizen involvement. The city of Gresham, for example, has a citizen involvement coordinator who is supervised by the city manager. Most cities and counties also have a network of citizen groups to help run the CAP. Although they have many names, these groups are generally referred to as citizen advisory committees. The Citizen Advisory Committee may be organized either on the basis of geography, city neighborhoods, for example, or by function such as transportation. And CACs may be permanent, standing committees, or temporary. Thus, there are 4 basic types of CACs shown in table, and I won't read the table. You guys can see that. Of the 4 main types of CAC, the most common is the Standing Neighborhood Committee. Such neighborhood groups known by different local names and abbreviations such as CPO, Community Planning Organization, etc. The difference between a CCI and a CAC, although they sound alike, Committee for Citizen Involvement and a Citizens Advisory Committee are quite different. A CCI deals mainly with one aspect of planning, citizen involvement, while CACs deal with a variety of planning and land use issues. Each community has only one CCI but may have many CACs. Finally, Goal 1 requires cities and counties to have CCIs but doesn't require them to have CACs. Oregon Statute 197.160, however, strongly implies that CACs are required. Oregon's laws recently were amended to give a stronger role to citizen advisory committees, ORS 197.763(2)B now requires that notice about quasi-judicial land use decisions must be provided to, quote, any neighborhood or community organization recognized by the governing body and whose boundaries include the site. The site means the property that is the subject of the decision. For more information on quasi-judicial decisions, see land use decisions in Chapter 4. Anybody else want to take over? How are local governments involved?
How are other local governments involved? First of all, Woodrow needs to keep up and stay on the same page as everybody else. Oregon's planning laws require local plans to be coordinated with each other. That requirement has important implications for a community citizen involvement program. It means that neighboring cities, counties, and special districts are, in effect, citizens. They need to be kept informed about local planning activities, and they need to have an opportunity to participate in them. Example, if a proposal to amend a city's transportation plan might have significant effects on nearby cities, counties, and special districts, all of them should be notified about it. All of them should have an opportunity to comment on proposal. Question, Coda, where does Metro fit in with some of this stuff? Is Metro a government organization that needs to be consulted? Do they have a CCI?
I'm not sure if they have a CCI, but they are considered a citizen, so they have to be consulted on certain projects, and also they need to, that's why they need to inform us of any sort of projects that might affect our area. Same with TriNet, they all fall within that same kind of category as a citizen. For example, we have to notify, for projects that we have to notify Multnomah County if it affects, potentially affect transportation on one of their streets that run through the city. So similar thing, we have to notify them if the project's going to affect that.
Thank you.
I guess I'm missing something. I'm curious about what the definition of citizen is, since these are entities and not humans.
And
Talked about it.
as was mentioned previously, that any other body, whether it be a neighborhood governing body or whose boundaries are included with the site, are considered citizens. Basically, to be where if we have a project, say we're going to do a multifamily structure that is within the vicinity of a Multnomah County roadway, that's going to significantly impact traffic. We need to notify them, and they will more than likely require traffic impact analysis to see how it's going to affect traffic. If we didn't do that, and then the traffic impacts the roadway, then that can create a lot of issues. That happened, for example, before they pulled out, the In-N-Out was going to go into Hillsborough. That was a big issue because where they're planning on putting it was at one of the most busy intersections in Tannisville. They required them to do a traffic impact along with Washington County. That was a big issue for them because they didn't want to, basically knowing that there was going to be a lot of traffic impact on that area, and they might have certain regulations put on them or conditions enforced by the city and the county. So that's why they need to be notified of those kinds of things. And that's why they're considered a citizen, to make sure we notify all involved. Same with the port, anything going on next to the port's an agency, but they are also a city. We need to notify them and get any sort of regulations. Same with MCDD, which Multnomah County Drainage District, levies. I think we need to notify them so they can have their comments.
Thank you. I didn't mean to be rude or anything.
No, not at all. That's a great question.
Very good question. What is the local framework for citizen involvement? The local organizations described above form a framework for citizen involvement. That framework will vary from one community to another. For example, CACs might report to the Planning Commission in one city and to the City Council in another. Despite such differences, however, most local citizen involvement frameworks are similar to that shown in Figure 2. Figure 2 has the CCI reporting to the council, Planning Commission reports to the council. It looks like all the different committees, design, parks, transportation,
And neighborhood committees.
and neighborhood committees report into planning. And then
We probably don't need to read through the state framework.
we should probably understand what ours look like. So
It's
what
hard to
is,
read that graphic?
it is terribly confusing. So it makes me want to get those 3D glasses though.
Yes.
You want to get me from my birthday.
I do hope through this exercise that as we're clarifying our role and objectives, that maybe creating a framework, so some kind of graphic that, so we can visualize that also would be important.
Some of that, I think, would be fairly simple to take, to put together, because like I know there are, that planning for certain projects have to go through certain committees, like before they get to planning commission. So like things that are in the town center district and are in opportunity zones have to hit PCAB first before they go to planning, if they go to planning at all. And things that are on the historical building list have to go through historic landmarks first. So some of those lines would be, I think, relatively easy to draw.
Who would be fast of drawing that?
I'm picturing a nice Visio in my head.
Yeah.
Is there anybody in the room who might know who can do that for us?
That's something you gotta.
So just to look at and then circulate and see if there's any, give it a stab if you could, and then,
And then some of it inevitably is going to get a little fuzzy because, as I know this has come up at more than one TCAP meeting and more than one historic landmarks meeting, is that what our understanding of what conditions applications would follow those lines isn't necessarily what the conditions actually are. Because for just as a couple of examples, we weren't really aware in TCAP that town center applications were only limited to opportunity zones that went to TCAP first, or we weren't aware that the bulb house wasn't actually on the historical building list, therefore we didn't get to see that application first.
the brewery?
Yeah, that is now a brewery that a Coin article apparently described as was a vacant lot before the brewery went in.
Are they brewing beer now?
But anyway, we could probably, somebody can certainly take a stab at drawing some of those lines, but just understanding that that they're not going to necessarily be distinct lines, it's going to be fuzzy.
And I love that, because I think one of our goals or roles would be to make things less fuzzy. Nothing against the beer, more of the glasses focus type thing, got it?
So process-wise, wondering what do we do next? What do we want to do as a group with the information we've read? Do we want to think about it for a while? Do we want to start formulating a statement, kind of like with some of the gyms, and then also start working on some of that visual representation of how we all connect to the bigger picture.
I'll tell you what I would suggest, throw out there. I have a copy of Clackamas County's CCI bylaws, and start with that. I would be happy to take that document and modify it to be applicable to the city of Troutdale rather than Clackamas County. Incorporate what is already in Troutdale's municipal code, put in a little bit more of the definitions that we find in this U of O article, which comes from the state of Oregon, and pass that out before the next meeting, and then we can rip it all apart and redline it and at least use it as a jumping off point.
I was just gonna say, can we make sure to get our archaic old one that was ever submitted to the state? Because I think
This one,
That was, it's the one that's.
that is
Yeah.
in fact,
Troutdale Citizen
well, that's the
Advisory
citizen
Committee.
advisory, but what
Yeah,
about
not
the
the
committee
ordinance, the
on,
CIP that was submitted to the state.
it's the citizen, or the committee on citizen involvement,
CCI?
it's the CCI. So I
I'll look
think
into that.
that, because that's supposed to be, the citizen advisory, I understand it more like advisory committees, that's why we have the parks, like the public safety, like we have TCAB, and we're just kind of an ad hoc one, but then there's been nobody kind of working on the citizen involvement, and we had, that was one of our tasks, but we didn't know that, so.
I'd like to see the straight Clackamas document, no edits. Right, just like to, if you could share that with us. And just to look as is, no edits, no red lines, no nothing. So just for us to see the format and the template. And I think we still have a lot more work to do before we get to making it.
All right, so for our next meeting, then we'll look at the official document that CCI that was submitted.
Do we want to finish reading chapter 3 next week, next month?
Chapter 3 is all just the state framework, and that's all LCDC and LUBA and all of that stuff that,
Other agencies?
yeah, state agencies that,
I think, I'm curious about the rest of chapter 3. I believe there was some, aside from the state, I want to say there's another reporting that needs to go out. So I'm hoping that we'll get to that, either in the more detailed chapter 3 or somewhere coming up shortly.
Personally,
What?
we finish it, just, sorry if I cut you off.
All right. Are you guys, do you want to read the rest of it this meeting, or are you guys feeling like we have enough
yeah,
to?
I think we've got enough, because I did read through all of this in pretty detail, and it like describes what LUBA does and what DLCD does, and I think for our role, and what we do that is functionally out of scope.
Okay, so what I hear then is for our next meeting, we'll look at the CIC. We're going to look at the one that they have for, what city did you say that was, Kevin?
It's Clackamas County.
Clackamas County. And then hopefully once we look at those documents, we can frame this a little more. And then are you guys feeling like it's a worthwhile exercise to read this together in here, or do we want to agree to pre-read before we come? And then just talk about the highlights.
I personally like reading together.
I definitely see the value in reading together, so we're on the same page and talk
Okay.
about, the same definitions and the same meanings, and hash out any questions one might have.
Okay,
And there's only 3 more chapters, so it shouldn't take all that long.
yeah, the next ones are bigger, so maybe next time we'll finish this, get through 4, and see where we are, if we have time to get to 5.
We could begin to finish 3 or 4 at least.
Yeah.
And then,
That review you were talking about is in chapter 4.
is that what it is? Good, 'cause and then, all right. I could have sworn there was some certification or requirement of participants at CCI. Is that true? Some areas require their participants in their CCI or CAC to submit something that says, I am a citizen, I am an entity, and this is validation of that fact.
All right.
I don't know if it needs to be, stamped or whatever, but I think some entities do that. I don't know why. I don't know if they're rolled up to the state. That's one of my questions too, is
I think we did that in our application
I'm-
to this.
yeah.
We have to.
It's in our, we have to say
Is it
we're
say
a
that we are a
citizen.
I wonder where that
Citizen or a
goes then.
business.
Who gets those?
I suspect that just goes to the staff, because then it goes into conflict of interest, and also, like, if there were any neighborhood associations or anything that need to be notified as an organization, as a unit, separate from the property owners, that would be in their list.
Cool.
Oh, yes.
But in the applications also, you may have Troutdale business owners also for certain committees. So certain committees, you don't have to be a citizen, but you either have to have business or citizen.
And the status of business owner in Troutdale makes you a citizen for the purposes of this discussion.
I just found something interesting. According to the current land use plan in Troutdale, the Troutdale City Council serves as the Committee for Citizen Involvement, CCI, which is responsible for evaluating the performance of the CAC and the city's overall citizen involvement program. So the City Council is the CCI in Troutdale.
Interesting.
Very interesting, because when Ray Young came and talked to us, he said we are chartered with, he had discovered that we were chartered with citizen involvement.
Well, the
So that's
CAC by ordinance, I mean, one of, like, point 1 or 2 in our role is being in charge of the citizen involvement program. And it lists out CIP in one of those bullet points. What Kevin was just saying is essentially, city council has the role of evaluating how good of a job we're doing in that role.
Okay, so that, I did read that CCI is responsible for reporting and evaluating, and reporting to the, example, I think it was to the city council, they report that. But so, we're not that, this is what you're saying, it's actually,
They are
We gotta
themselves that committee.
but we have to provide them the data. Right?
Yeah.
They don't have the data without.
here's the example that we just read, that chart, it shows the
Right.
CCI reporting to city council.
Right, but I think, we're sort of getting conflicting paths and terminology here, because the CCI by definition is, at least by this
That
definition,
yeah.
is in charge, and by ordinance is in charge of the citizen involvement plan. So they're the functional entity for executing it. What Kevin was just reading is whatever acronym gets attached to it is one of oversight.
The land use plan was what, from 85, 84, somewhere?
Well, it's been updated since.
Are you talking about the development code?
I'm talking about the City of Troutdale Comprehensive Land Use Plan.
Yeah, that's required to be updated every 5 years.
Right, so it was recently, well, within the last 5 years.
So that's interesting, I mean, to me, it's just interesting that they told us one.
Who's on first?
So wait, Kevin, what was that you read? I didn't quite all of that.
Well, it's said, according to the Comprehensive Land Use Plan of Troutdale, the City Council of Troutdale is the Committee for Citizen Involvement. Rather than having the CCI be a separate
Right, but
Separate
what was the
committee.
tail end of, what was that, the tail end of that bullet point? Basically said it was responsible for evaluating the CAC,
Right,
but, so CCI, by this definition, is not an evaluative committee. It's the execution of the committee, so we're sort of, again, I think we're getting caught up in semantics. But if you look at functionally, the spirit of what it's trying to say is that we are responsible for the plan. We are the watchdogs to make sure that citizen communication happens effectively and as much as is humanly possible. And by the land use plan, city council is responsible for oversight and making sure that we are doing that effectively, is the way I read that.
So when we report,
Yeah.
then they could say, you guys aren't doing a good enough job.
Yeah.
Okay, or you're doing a fabulous job, so, okay.
All right. Any other comments, or should we open it up to see if there's any public comments?
Public left.
Any comments before we move on to our next agenda item? Not hearing anything. So we will.
No, I'm good, thanks.
Oh, thank you. To staff communications.
All right. I didn't have a chance to put together a little slideshow, but I just want to update you all. Things that I mentioned last meeting. We have 2 conditional uses going to Planning Commission next week, next Wednesday. One is for, I think the actual name of the business is Checkmat Jiu-Jitsu, so it's a jiu-jitsu studio that's going into the Columbia Outlet Malls, and then the indoor pickleball facility, East County pickleball courts, going in the Troutdale Market. So those packets were completed today and should have been delivered. So that's going to be a pretty large meeting, or a pretty heavy meeting next week, just big stuff coming up. So it's going to be a little bit longer one, local presentations.
So just out of curiosity, those are in for conditional use just because the code does, as it is written, doesn't really know how to handle large indoor athletic stuff?
In a sense, yes.
Okay.
So they both fall under we don't have a definition. That's currently what Planning Commission is working on, is certain definitions. We'll be looking at our definitions, trying to either streamline or clean up our code. It's something that they do every year, and they're starting off strong this year looking at our definitions. We do not currently have a definition for gym in our code. And gym can be a number of different things. So Checkmat and Jiu-Jitsu, there's other Jiu-Jitsu studios within the city. Code's different now than when they were put in, so there's different regulations. How am I set? Also, there's different planners. So myself and Nick, the assistant planner, we both looked at the code, looked at these, and decided that they really do fall under a active recreation use, which is a conditional use in either of those zones. They're both in the commercial zone. And the best bet is, instead of trying to look at how, we looked at different sections of the code and what one it might fall under. If we don't have a specific definition, we felt that's the best section of code and asked them to go through the conditional use process. These weren't ones that came in initially from a pre-application process. These are ones that we noticed either from building bringing them to us when they submitted for building permits, or business licensing looking at it that way, where, hey, so unfortunately, you got to go through the process first, which both applicants were more than willing to do so.
So, are these just like, for jujitsu, is that just open one big room with mats, I guess? Or do they have any stands or seating? Same with the pickleball. Is this gonna be, is there room for bleachers, risers, whatever, for them to do, a number of spectators in addition to the courts, or how's that work?
I'll start with the jiu-jitsu one. That one is actually the assistant planner Nick's. That's his project. So he's working That is going to be primarily mats. There is going to be a waiting area, some additional kind of chairs along the outside for people to sit or get ready or changing, if they're changing their shoes type thing, take their shoes off, as well as a small little office. So if they have to do a tenant improvement as well, just because they're gonna put a little wall up, so they have a little office for them to do any kind of clerical type work and books. For the East County pickleball courts, they're going to have 12 pickleball courts. They're going to be regulation size. It's going to be the largest in Oregon and largest, I believe, on the West Coast. As of right now, they don't have any site plans for interior. They do have building permits in. They're doing a concurrent review. So I haven't looked at those yet because they need to go through us first before I review their building permits. I don't believe they're planning on bleachers, but I do believe that they're planning on don't hold me to this again, I haven't reviewed their plans for building yet, but I believe there might be a concession, like a small concession or something like that, and then like a changing area or leave your bags, like small little lockers on the side or something. But again, I haven't reviewed their building permits yet, because that, it all hinges on whether or not they receive planning commission approval before moving forward with any building permits.
Because just in my mind, if one or the other or both, whatever, if they had, an extensive bleacher system, that would go different from a gym. You know what I mean?
Yes, and that's why they're not, from their narrative and from what I've had conversations with the applicants, that's not something that they're proposing. They are hoping to potentially be able to hold tournaments there,
Right.
but they're not tournaments where people are coming to watch. They're more tournaments. They have all of your time. They have you're going to rent out you rent out your court for so long. When they do tournaments, they have the courts. They have a schedule, but people aren't sitting in bleachers watching. That's just an idea they have right now. It's similar to there's one in Portland that's a large indoor pickleball. You rent your court for so long, typically an hour, maybe two. You come in there, you play, you leave. So that's the kind of style that most indoor pickleball courts are doing, and that's the same style they're looking for.
Excellent.
A couple of things, so I guess Woodrow, just to expand on the one thing a little, so the Checkmat Jiu-Jitsu, they may be moving here from Gresham, because there used to be one of those in the gym that I work out at, and they were pretty open. They basically just had the one big mat for the activities, of course, and they had benches that sometimes people would sit on, I think mostly parents for the younger kid classes, and then they had a little cubby that was just like a shelf with a bunch of square-shaped holes in it, and then they had a desk that I think functioned as the office instead, since it wasn't their own building. That was about it.
It is the same one.
Okay. Yeah. And said something about next month there was going to be a longer meeting. Which meeting were you talking about?
Oh, I'm talking next week. I'm just saying the planning commission meeting is going to be a good meeting. We have 2 full conditional use, so it's just going to be. We're actually finding we have a lot of applications, coming in, so we're now keeping the planning commission busy as well as ourselves. And then the other big news is we just learned today. Of course, the director has some more information on this. I haven't read through the entire document. As some of you may or may not know, City of Troutdale is part of a lawsuit along with other cities regarding the CFEC rules, so climate-friendly and equitable communities, regarding parking restrictions. I know if anybody listened into the Planning Commission last week, or last month, our director, Erica Palmer, came and gave just kind of update and presentation of where we're at. The ruling just came down, and all the cities within Oregon we lost that lawsuit. So that was just informed today. So again, I haven't read through the whole.
What's the consequence, briefly?
I believe we have to kind of what was discussed in the last planning
Money
commission.
penalty?
No, we have to follow through with the CFAC guidelines.
Was that the reduced number of parking spaces was the biggie?
Yeah, yes, we need to basically decide, the city, and this is stuff that we'll be going through, planning commission. We did receive an extension, it's not initially thought it was due this June, it's actually due next June. So we have much more time and discussion, we'll be going to planning commission with a lot of work sessions on this. Basically, we need to decide, pick two, we already have option A as requirement, option B, we need to pick two options out of option B. I don't have a whole lot of information on it, I read through it, if you'd like, I can send the presentation that was at last planning commission, if anybody has any more questions. Erica put together a fantastic presentation for planning commission that really kind of laid things out. And of course, this is going to be many discussions in the future, and so we have to make the code amendments by not this coming June, but next June of 2026. And that's all I have.
Thank you.
Those are the big things coming up, right?
You know, I've seen more surveyors in the field, so I'm assuming Home Forward is gonna actually start moving dirt here relatively soon.
I believe they wanted to by the end of this month, so I believe they're trying to start moving dirt by the end of March at the latest. They do have, I believe they received planning approval, or building approval for the grading work. There's still a couple things that they're working through their plans with Public Works Engineering and building regarding some of the access points with the roads and vacationing of 2nd Street. So I know it's outside of my realm. I just kind of been looped in to make sure that everything still meets what was approved. So they are planning on starting to break. They really like to break ground.
Just as a curiosity thing is, just because I don't know how these projects usually go, if trees are coming out as part of that plan, is that usually done pretty early in the grading?
Yes, that's typically done during the grading portion. I know I can't remember off the top of my head, I'm trying to memorize the site plan. I know there's a couple trees that will be, a handful that are going to be removed and they're required to replace within their landscaping plan.
Okay.
So.
Because that whole string of trees that's along 4th Street there, all of those were gonna go. I do, yeah, I remember, because frankly, I want those to go, because they're crap trees, but there's larger ones that are closer to the waterway that there was some discussion about earlier in the process, but the ones that are, because they have to put in a retaining wall up against 4th Street, so all of those trees those have to go.
And typically they do that at the same time as the grading.
All right. Oops, sorry. Do you have another comment? No.
I was just wondering if I can get a copy of that presentation.
Totally.
I'd like to see that.
Do you have any more aerial photographs of the city of Troutdale left? Was that you, or who was doing that?
That was Public Works that was.
Oh, yeah, Public Works.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I see the building and I'll lump you guys in, my bad.
Reach out, they might, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah, that was it. I'm not sure about it.
All right, let's go ahead and move on to committee comments. I'll just do round robin. Victoria.
Congratulations on being chair and congratulations on being vice chair. And I know Shelley doesn't hear us, but another big thank you to Shelley. She did a great job all these years.
Woodrow.
Just keep chiming in on that. Congratulations, both of you. Great job. And I look forward to a lot of great things from both of you. I don't know. Dakota, thanks for attending. I appreciate you making the effort. Where's your boss at?
I'm the liaison for this committee, so she does it.
Just put a note there that Woodrow asked.
I'll let her know.
Yeah, try and make it sound snarky, but it's not.
Adrian.
Good discussion tonight. I think it's a lot of valuable ideas getting passed around, and I look forward to seeing how how this evolves. Because I think the evolution of us as a group will be somewhat organic as time goes on, and I think it is bound to be interesting.
Chris?
I think I would first echo the congratulations to you and to Kevin, and I would also share a thank you to Shelley. I'm going to miss her as well. So I did have a question that Dakota, I think, would be for you. So this mainly came to my mind because I was going through my old documents of just stuff from this committee from basically when I started till now, and then I was reminded of it by something someone said earlier, and I don't know if something changed and I forgot about it or what happened, but I know that in this committee, we used to review minutes of previous meetings, and I was wondering whatever happened to that, because we haven't done that in a long time.
Oh, that's a good question. I am not sure. That hasn't been brought to my attention before, so that's a really good question. That's something I can ask around about. I know that there was miscommunication for some of the committees in the, over the last, I believe it was last year, about recording minutes. So now actually Chris Ann will start recording minutes. I'm not sure if it's for the CAC as well, but definitely for the Planning Commission and some of the other meetings. I know City Council always has minutes, and we're currently I haven't heard anything else about it, but a while back we were given a presentation about a software that we could use potentially within the city to do that automated for us. So someone doesn't go back and listen to the meeting and have to hand type out all the minutes. It's automatically done. So I'll ask about that. Yeah, I'm not sure.
And also, I believe last month you said something about, mentioned something about committee members whose terms are coming up or something.
Those whose terms are coming up should have received an email. I think it was either from Sarah. I think it's from Sarah. I have to double check. They're coming up. I can let you know within our committee who those are. Let's see. Woodrow, yours is coming up, so you should have received an email with another application to submit by the end, I believe by April. And then I believe Jenny's are the only two currently. Oh, Chris, yours is too, sorry. Yeah, so if you haven't received it, I'll ping them tomorrow and make sure. I think they should have sent you out like, hey, if you're interested again, like another reapply. So
I can check, but I don't think I've seen it.
oh, well, let me double check with that.
Thank you. Yeah, but no. Sorry. That was awesome.
Sorry.
Congratulations to you and to you, and much appreciation for Shelley. And thank you, all the rest of you, for being so great on this committee. Appreciate you all, and appreciate Dakota being here too. You do a great job. Thanks.
I guess I didn't say thank you to Dakota Salt, but
We appreciate it.
Well, I'll say congratulations, Twyla, and I'm gonna say good luck, Kevin. Not congratulations. Thank you, Dakota. And thanks all for a great discussion.
Yes, thank you, Dakota and Chris Ann, and thank you guys for the warm wishes, and thank you, Kevin, for coming along for the ride. Many thanks to Shelley for all the work she's done in supporting this and holding us together, and hoping as I acclimate to this role to fill some of those shoes and walk us into the future. So looking forward to that. Anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
I will.
Second.
Sorry.
I'll say yes. Thank you.
Yep.
Have a great evening, everybody.
Yeah.